Hello, hello, hello. This is Thumbs United. We are doing our kind of hodgepodge. This is a new thing I'm doing. Technically, it's not new. It's how I originally did streams. Was before I would do the video gameplay, capture it, and then narrate over it. So back to that now. I've been having difficulties having enough time to sit down and stream. So I've recorded several sections of Destiny 2, and that kind of be the background for that. But didn't do many podcasts of the Thumbs United streams in February. I've done like maybe 5 episodes so far, or maybe this is the fifth one. But the Thumbs United one was pretty easy to do until now. I've just been so overloaded with projects I've been working on, and it's not so much that I've been working on so many projects, it's that I've been stuck with one project and everything kind of needs to happen after that. And so that's kind of been like anxiety inducing. And this one project is with AI stuff, so there's a whole bunch of testing I have to do. I'll talk about that later. But the good news is that I've gone back to this way of doing podcasts / streams. So hopefully it will be more reliable from now on. But yeah, so that's that. Now, the state of Destiny 2. I played Destiny 1 way... I think I didn't play Destiny 1 until Destiny 2 came out. And I had no issue with Destiny 1. I knew exactly what to do. The gameplay, the menu systems, everything was, I never struggled with it. It was like, oh, I have to do this to level up, blah, blah, blah. I never had to watch tutorials or anything. And, it was nonstop fun. Even with when I got to Rise of Iron. I thought Rise of Iron was a little bit more difficult, but, it was still fun. And so I got a lot of, comments, not comments, but people in chat on Twitch saying, oh, you should go to Destiny 2. Destiny 2 is free. So I was like, you know what, I'll go. I went to Destiny 2, and yes, it was free, but I bought, there was some deal, and so it was the Witch Queen and some other stuff. And so I got the pack, and oh my goodness, I struggled. I did live stream it. It's on my YouTube channel, but I struggled with finding out where to go and everything, and so I kind of took a break. Like I spent maybe 5 or 6 hours in Destiny 2, and it was getting to the point where it was getting, fun and everything. But then it was just, there was this quest issue where like I didn't really know what happened between Destiny 1, Destiny 2. And so then I was kind of looking over the internet, and they're like, oh, they removed. So apparently I guess there was, the first levels of Destiny 2 talked about what happened between the two, but Bungie removed that, and they said, oh, it's so old. It was from like 2017, which, yeah, I mean, that is older because we're in 2023 now, but still. So I had no idea what happened with that. I didn't go watch other people's Let's Plays or synopses of what happened there. And then, I don't know if it was just the season I was in Destiny 2 at that time for doing the Witch Queen was, everything worked out well. But there's a new season, and I have no idea what to do. Like, it keeps taking me, like as you can see, we're doing Lightfall now. And it's just, I don't know. I'm just so confused. I keep trying to go back to the Witch Queen, but then there's the other issue is that I don't do a co-op with people so often, because I kind of think it's rude if I'm, recording it or live streaming it. I don't want, people who don't want to be on stream. And none of my friends really play Destiny 2, so it means I do the strikes by myself, and the strikes are tuned. Like if it's a 3-person strike, it's meant to be as difficult. it's meant to be difficult for 3 people, so it's almost impossible to do with just one player. And so I've completed a couple of strikes that way, not just by myself, but it is obnoxious. And like, I'm a pretty chill guy, but my palms are sweaty. I'm like stress sweating. I feel like I'm about to have a heart attack. It's not that I rage quit. It's just like, what happens is you give the best performance in gameplay as, as like unbelievable performance. You're taking guys down, you're going left, you're going right, and then you're like so close to beating the final boss. And I kid you not, like there were several times where it's like, it tells you the final bosses, what their health is, and you're like 2 slivers of a pixel from ending that boss, and then something so stupid kills you, and of course respawn is disabled, and so you have to go back again, to whittling down that final boss by yourself, because there's no one there to revive you. And so there have been a couple of times where it wasn't like rage quit, but it was just, like I said, you gave your best performance ever, and you had to start over from scratch. And then it's just like, oh, I can't do it. My heart, I got a heart condition. I gotta take a chill pill. But I used to joke with people that they were giving me a heart attack. But yeah, so that's kind of why I stopped live streaming Destiny and playing Destiny 2 for a little bit. But anyway, so I got back. I actually did this level before, but for whatever reason, I quit before it ended. And I think I was just tired. I've been, sick off and on, where I get sensitive to light. So I pretty much have to crawl in a hole in like complete darkness. But I did come back, and it was a lot of fun. But as we continue in this series, you'll see that I run into the problem where it's like, okay, you did this mission, but there are 3 other things you have to do to continue, but we're not going to tell you what they were, because it was like part of an old season. I was like, what? So at this point, Rasputin we don't have up and running, and so the next mission it tries to throw me into is, spoiler, Rasputin's trying to, disable himself. And so I'm trying to figure out what happened in between, and it's not clear where I can find those story missions. And then there was another one that I was doing with Aramis. And so I beat Aramis, and we have, what's his face? Varys. And he's like, okay, you can still do missions for me. Still have to take out the Fallen and this and that. And so I'm like, okay. So it's like you have to do 2 missions to complete this. Like 2 side missions to complete this. So I do the 2 side missions. And then, that was a whole other problem. It says do 2 side missions. It doesn't tell you where to get them from. So I'm activating the quest. It's not showing me where to go. And I go back and I'm like really carefully reading the quest details, because I don't know where anything is in Destiny 2. But I figure it out, and so I do 1 and then I do 2, and then it doesn't register that I did them. And I was like, what? So I got stuck with that part with the Aramis story. And then I forgot where I went. I went to, I don't remember what planet it was, but then a whole other storyline started, and I was like, what? But I was like, fine. You know what? I gave up playing Destiny linearly, trying to play Destiny 2 in a linear manner. I said, I just, whatever missions I can play, I'll just play. And so I do that, and I'm walking through this place, and they're like, ooh, spooky. And there's like this strange floating ghost guiding you places, and I'm like, oh, great. So the whole mission was just me walking on this like half taken down place, and then I get and they're like, okay, scan this. So I scan it, and then a bunch of enemy pop up, and the whole mission is just run back out the way you came. I was like, what? And so then I was like, okay, that was an interesting story. Like, how do I continue that? And it's like, psych. Can't select that quest. So, I don't know. It's just, I'm not playing Destiny 2 the right way. And it's kind of, at this point, I'm too afraid to ask how you're supposed to play Destiny 2. But I am going to continue to try to, I don't know, I'm just going to be playing it for gameplay, not so much for story, which is like the opposite of what I normally do, because like I like stories in games. Like I liked, playing as the Master Chief. You got to go through the story and everything of Halo. Like I never stepped foot in multiplayer and everything. So that's kind of the thing I don't like so much about Destiny, where multiplayer is really forced upon you, and the story isn't that great. But that's kind of my struggle in terms of gaming. But the gameplay in Destiny is so great. Like I said, I'm having problems figuring out how the story goes, but the gameplay is phenomenal. And Bungie's said that in the past, that their number one priority is gameplay. And they just build the story around the gameplay. But so the project I've been working on that's taken up so much time is working with machine learning. In I think it was, might have been even November. I was doing a lot of working with AI art stuff, and it wasn't like prompts like you type into you go into a web page and say show me a painting of a sunset. It wasn't so much that. What I was working with was like AI interpretation of art, and so I would I would have a picture of my sunset. Like I have tons of photographs, and so I would go and find one of my photos with orange sunset, yellows and blues and purples, and so I would send that into the AI generator that I use. I use Huggins transformers, and so I would send it the image, and I would say, okay, this is a golden sunset, and then I want you to do an effect of make it look like a painting. So it's my photo and everything, and it would spit out. I'm like, okay, here's a painting effect over it, and it would look really good. And so then I thought, okay, so it doing one version of that sunset, and that's interesting. So I made it so that it does the same thing like 5 times. And so what's interesting with the AI and visual arts is that it never outputs the same thing twice. So it always tries to do something a little bit different. Sometimes there's huge differences, but I've never seen it spit out the same interpretation of an artwork at once. Now, if you're doing text prompts, then yeah, I've seen it do repeatable things. But when I'm supplying art to it and asking it to do its interpretation of that art, it always comes out with something a little bit different. And so I've had it running on the computer where I submit a picture I've done, and I'll have it go and do like 40 iterations. So it just loops the whole thing over, but it saves it as a different file name, so it doesn't overwrite the previous one. And so it will come up with 40 images that are very similar, and it's scary because it was like, wow, those are very good interpretations. And so one of the problems I was thinking was like, okay, so what's it comparing it to? And I was also kind of having like, a crisis of faith. Like, here I think I'm so creative, but the way machine learning works is, you feed it, billions of images, telling the machine what each thing is, and it learns what it is, and blah blah blah. And so here I am. I do my photography. Most of it is, it's not heavily photoshopped. I do color grade. I do work with brightness and contrast a little bit, but I'm not going crazy photoshopping. Like, I'm not replacing the sky with different sunsets, which a lot of people do. And then I'm not so much doing digital manipulation. I'm just, trying to honestly make the colors as they appear to be, or as I saw them at the time, which is another topic of, how you perceive the world. And so the crisis of faith was just like, okay, so I've done all this work I've done. The AI has no idea who I am in terms of photography and creative works that I've done, but it's already able to interpret what I'm submitting to it and kind of generate images that are similar in my style, even though I have not participated in the original database that it's drawing upon. And so it was like, oh, it's really cool because it's able to learn kind of my style and says, okay, from one image I give it, it says, oh, this is kind of that guy's style. I'm going to give him something back in that similar style. And so that was really interesting. And yeah, it's really impressive because a lot of people, creators, there was this huge burst. I don't know what happened, but everyone, like, I don't know if there was like a sale on some social media program, but everyone was like, I just gave my profile picture to this AI generator, and it came out with like these things, and it's the same thing. They gave them, like 5 or 6 photos of themselves, and then the AI generated, art that it thought was appropriate for that person, and like the facial expressions are the same, and everything like that. And then of course it does exaggerate some body parts, so did it exaggerate some, anyway. So there are a lot of people that I follow and communicate with, and they're like, wow, this is great. And I was losing my train of thought. So that's kind of the AI art thing that I was working on back in October, November. And then, so I was talking about doing landscape photography. My example was the sunset. So then I continued on that. I don't know if a lot of you know this, but I've done a little bit, not working for anyone, just, as a hobby. I do 3D animations and things like that. I used to do a lot of the videos and stuff I would release on YouTube. I would do stereoscopic versions. So it was like actual 3D videos shot with a 3D camera and everything. And I still have a tons of 3D footage, and I'm planning to get back to that. I've just been busy programming and everything that I haven't had a lot of time to edit the way I want to edit. But for a lot of the stereoscopic photos and videos and stuff, I also did 3D characters, like the kind you would see in like this video game and everything like that. And a lot of it was, it's uncanny valley, I'm not going to lie. It's just, it's not like it's cringe, but it's like it's photorealism, but it's just not right, like 100%. So I'm trying to get rid of the creepiness factor. It's actually funny because uh, uh, for in high school, I was doing animation back then too, and so back in like 2007, I think it was. No, it was 2008. We had to do these art projects. Well, not art project. We had to do a final project for this one class. It was not Parsifal. It was Goethe's. Oh man, I remember what the art project was that I ended up doing, but I don't remember what the book was called. Oh yeah, it was Faust. Okay, so it was Faust, and so there's that part in Faust where we had to we could do any project we wanted for the final project, but we had to explain it, and it had to like show some creativity and some sort. So some people wrote a poem about Faust. Some people did like oil paintings and things like that, and so for Faust, what I did was there was that scene where I think there was a lady who was having his kid, but then she had to get rid of it and stuff, and so I did this kind of 3D animation over my photography and everything of this kid kind of flying away, and it's about a Faust abandoning his kid and stuff. But it was funny because not funny, haha, but it was. I heard later that there was a parent-teacher conferences and stuff, and so the teacher was like, "Yeah, Lloyd did this one project, and it was a little creepy." And I was like, "Creepy?" She didn't tell me that. She told my mom that, and then my mom's asking me about it. And I was like, "Doop-a-doop-a-doo." So, yeah, I've been doing kind of creepy CGI forever. It wasn't like creepy, like explicit. It was just like, kind of uncanny valley. But yeah, that was back in the day with Poser and a little bit of work in Blender. But the whole point of that story was that I do a little bit of animation and environmental stuff. And I used to do I would I design things kind of old school with drafting, and then I input it into the computer that way. I've come up with some cameras that you can 3D print and stuff, so that like a GoPro can hold a 35mm lens and things like that. But so I was taking some of my old animations that I've done, and I was like, okay, I'm going to take the CGI stuff, and I want to see how the AI, interprets that. So I, before I gave the example of, here I have my sunset photo, I'm telling it to give me a painting version of the sunset, and it has, the clouds of the sunset in the same place as the photos, but it's come up with its own brushstrokes and everything. So it very much, it's not that it stole somebody else's artwork 100%, because if you look at them superimposed and stuff, it's still my composition. It's I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm giving it a random photograph, one that it hasn't seen before. is there a chance that somebody else has painted the exact same type of thing that it could be just matching up? And so I think it's taking bits and pieces of things where it's like, okay, this is a cloud, but I know how I'm going to colorize a cloud, and this cloud is represented on the left corner of this image, so I'm going to put that there. And so it's hodgepodging all this stuff together, but it's still kind of, I don't know, it's weird. I did start getting weirded out by it for a little bit, but in terms of, you know, whose artwork is this? Is it my art because it's my photography that I photoshopped and everything and color graded and took the photo and stuff? Or is it the machine's art because it interpreted that photograph and put its overlay on it? Or is it, you know, the machine and somebody else's art and mine because it learned how to, you know, draw clouds from, you know, these 300 artists, or it learned, you know, what a sun was from these 30 billion photos it processed. So, I don't know. That's kind of the things I think about when I was generating the art. But, so then I started to submit to the machine the um, the 3D animations I've done. There are like characters of women and men, you know, some of them in icy forests, not icy forest, an icy mountaintop, some of them in like these ruin environments. And so I started, you know, so it's kind of funny because it's not, before I was submitting, you know, my own artwork, but it's of the physical world. Now I'm submitting 3D renders of a simulated world. And so I wanted to see how it would interpret that. And so it was really scary too, because I did have, you know, they're not, none of my characters are like, they're not common. They are not, it's not like I'm submitting a character like Superman, something that's so famous and out there that everyone knows what Superman looks like, or Batman. I mean, they're just kind of generic people, but you know, some of them with, you know, hairstylings in a certain way. You know, one might have pink hair or something like that. And I think this is where, yeah, I started running into issues here. I had a horrendous time with the menuing system. Okay, here we go. I'm trying to export all these photos too. I'm going to talk about what I'm doing with those as well. But anyway, so I submit, you know, these animated characters, and each one's doing their own pose and whatnot, and you know, the environments are things that I've created. Um, and so then the machine, so it's photorealistic 3D renders, the kinds, you know, like this game, or you know, most video games. It's not, you know, an art style or something like that. And I tell it to, you know, give it back to me as though it's digital art, like a painting, digital painting or something like that. And so it's giving them back, and like it's really, really high quality, um, painting and stuff, of the character. And so it will be like, okay, my character will be wearing, a pink dress and have blue hair and in this whatever pose. And then the machine will give back a painting of, same colorish pink of as the dress, and it will have drawn the dress. And it will be a woman sitting in kind of the same pose. And and then same color hair and everything. And what was interesting was with the 3D animated stuff, like it did deviate from what I had, submitted, but it was the same kind of style. Like it was the same character. It was able to pick up what a pink dress was. It was able to pick up was the hair and the facial structure, to where they all kind of did look similar. And so then I, tried putting my thumb on the scale, where I would say, okay, even though I was submitting a photo and it wasn't like an anime or something, I'd say, okay, make this an anime oil painting, blah, 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 blah. And then I would submit my image with that. And so then it would try to interpret, and like it would rearrange it, figure out what the human was. It would figure out how to make an anime version of them. And I was like, wow. That's incredible. And so then I had even more questions, studying that in terms of like, okay, so, when does it become not my character design? I guess is what I'm saying. Like, I've done this work doing the 3D modeling, hair design, and, environmental work. But the machine's interpretation of my work is something that it's not identical, but it's very similar to what I've done. And it has like the attributes that I, put into the image and the characters, but it's very much unique. Like it's not somebody who sat down and traced my animation and then colored it in or anything. It's, nothing quite lines up. It's all, when you're painting somebody, a lot of the problems when you're painting is framing. Or like with a photograph, you frame the photo and then you take the photo. And so painting from a still life or somebody posing for painting is really difficult, because you have to figure out what you want to put in the frame of the picture, which is a lot harder than you think. And then like when you start drawing an arm, you think, oh, I just draw this arm, no problem. But what part of the arm do you want in the picture? And like, is the arm supposed to be, the painting supposed to be just a picture of the arm, or is it supposed to be a picture of arm, shoulder, and head and everything, So once you start drawing, you start realizing, oh, that doesn't fit in the frame if I make the arm this big or that. And so scaling is a big problem in painting and drawing, versus painting or drawing from, a photograph. And so it's kind of what I'm impressed with the artificial intelligence is I'm giving it a photograph or a 3D render or a drawing that I did, and it's interpreting its own spacing, its own its own framing, where it's like, okay, I do want to have this character, but it's not framed the way I framed it. It's not in the exact same place. It is like more over to the right, and the camera angle is slightly different. And so then, and like I'm talking a lot about the character, but also the environmental detail is somewhat similar but not the same. And what's impressive with that is that a lot of the 3D animation, everything I do, when you're doing 3D animation, you do have a camera you work with, even though there's no physical camera. And so a lot of times the default camera is 35 millimeters, and that has to do with, what type of focal length the 3D animation will be represented with. And so I actually have the camera use be a large format, a medium format size. What is the word? Medium format size camera. So having it be a diagonal of 80 millimeters. And so that means that you get depth of field. The closer you are to the subject, well, no, the farther away the subject is, you still get a huge range of depth of field. There's a very good separation of the character with the background. It separates that way, but you also get a very like a razor thin depth of field, even if they're farther away, which is something that's harder to do with 35 millimeter film. With things that are far away, when they're close, it's easy to get a shallow depth of field, but with medium format, it's easy to get a shallow depth of field with objects that are farther away from the camera. And that easiness increases with the larger the frame sensor format or film format is. But so the whole point of this is that my 3D animations will be it will be like a head, neck, shoulders, and a little bit of the torso from kind of far away, but only their eye and nose will be in razor sharp focus, and by the time you look at the character's ears, it's pretty out of focus, and so the background is just just kind of a very soft blur of colors and things, and you can kind of tell, like, okay, maybe that's a pillar in the background or whatnot, but it is out of focus. And so even with all that loss of detail, the AI was able to figure out, okay, this is human shape, even though that part's not in focus, and even though the hair is completely out of focus, this is, hair that's in a braid, and blah 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 blah, and so forth. So that was like, wow. And so then it would simulate what it thought was in the background, and it would be pretty close. So like in the background, even though it's all blurred out, because of the depth of the field, I had it to where it was, a scene, in kind of these ruins, architectural ruins, in the middle of a mountain range, and then there's snow and everything. And so it was coming up with images of, snowy mountain range and the character, and it was still out of focus in the format of being an oil painting and everything like that. So that made me think, well, again, it was my design, my input, but how did the AI come up with that? Is it because it only looks at specific pieces and says, well, this area is kind of dedicated to sky, so I'm going to copy and paste a sky from another database? Or is it that it says, okay, this is sky, I know what 30 billion different skies that look like, I'm going to interpretate my own version of a sky and paste that in there? Or is it just copying some other artist's work of a sky that is the exact right color that it's supposed to be? And so I don't think that is copy and pasting the artwork of somebody else for each little section, because it's too aligned with my own style, if that makes sense. Where it's not just looking for certain color skies, but it's also I'm having a hard time trying to say what I'm trying to say. but it's the continuity. Like it fits all too well together to be just copy and pasted and blurred, together with art. So I think with the machine learning, what it is it actually learned how to best represent, what it's seen. So yes, it looked at 50 billion paintings of clouds, and when it's drawing a cloud, it's not drawing, from one of the examples. It just knows through probability. Like, okay, to be a cloud, it has to be, white, semi-transparent, the way the light hits it and stuff. So it actually understands the category of cloud, and it's drawing what it thinks a cloud should look like and fit in that area. So I don't think it's like this huge Photoshop thing of like collages of other people's work, if that makes sense. I think it actually does understand what it's trying to represent. If that makes sense. So there are a lot of people who say that, AI work is just, stolen artwork. And I don't think it is. I think that the databases that were used to train the AI, that may have been stolen. And normally I'd say, that's terrible and everything. But a lot of people are complaining because it's AI and, people hate machines. But what I think happened was they were just, web crawlers. And like the problem that I have with people getting grumpy with it is that nobody really cared too much when, Google went around crawling the web. And like a lot of photographers from back in my day when I was growing up that I would learn from, they were really grumpy that their images were showing up on Google image search. And, newer photographers and everything might be like, why would you be grumpy at Google? But the main reason is, the photographers and artists put a lot of, care in how they develop their websites. Like, they're usually static, but they're organized in a way where it's like, okay, here are all my paintings that I've done for this Africa series where you have elephants and zebras and stuff. And so, everything's aligned to fit together. There's, layout designs and things like that. And so when you have Google saying, like, okay, I'm going to Google Photations and zebra, and then, all my photos of zebras come up, well, that I have specific, zebra photos for different collections. And so maybe I don't want them to be seen, right next to each other because there is, very different style for what each collection was supposed to be. And then the other issue that the photographers didn't like was like, okay, you've just kind of cheapened the experience to just zebra photos. So you get, hundreds of photos of zebras, but no real recognition to the photographers or the source that took it. So there was a big hubbub about that, and that's why Google, before you could just right-click and save the image on Google, but then they added that extra step where you have to click the image and then it says, this might not be for public use. And so a lot of people kind of made fun of photographers because they were like, why do you guys care? You should be happy Google has your images on Google image search and everything. And so that's not what I think AI art is, but I think that's how the huge databases of artwork were created. I think there were tools, the web crawlers, like the ones Google used, that was just searching the internet, finding everything that was public, and just trying to sort them into a format that a machine could learn. And so what AI is it's not consciousness. It's just it tries to identify patterns. And so a lot of times it's doing thousands of guesses. So what you would do is, you would give it, 2,000 photos of clouds. And you would, say, okay, compare these, 2,000 photos. They all have a cloud in them, find them. And so the machine will just loop through and try to figure out, well, is these 3 pixels what makes a cloud? And so then it will look through all 2,000 photos and says, these 3 pixels are in 200 of these photos, but it's not in the rest of the 800 and 1,000 photos. And so it will just, continually going through. It takes forever of just trying to figure out, okay, what the heck is a cloud? These 2,000 photos have what the human says is a cloud. What is the common denominator in all of these? And so it will just go through and try to come up with all these rules on how it defines a cloud. And this process is called training. You're trying to get the machine to understand what it's seeing. And so, of course, you need 2,000 photos of clouds. Now, with the machine learning database, you need significantly more images than just 2,000. And then you need, for visualization, you need, several, billions of images for the different types of things. So, like, you would need, 2,000 photos of women, and that's not even linearly enough, but it has to figure out what a woman is, has to figure out what a man is, has to figure out what a kid is, and then it has to figure out what a girl is and what a boy is. And so, like, you can see, like, there's millions of things that are relatively simple. There is to do a relatively simple thing of, like, okay, draw a portrait of a family. It has to figure out all these things, and each one would take, hundreds of thousands of images it has to process to figure out what they are and find out what the common denominator is. And yeah, so that's that about. So I don't think it's stealing art. I think the art was stolen, that was trained. Stealing is a wrong word. I think it was shown art that was, already publicly on the internet. And so, is it stolen if a machine looks at it? I mean, if that's the case, then, everything that's in Google search is stolen because a bot searched, through the web page and took the text, summarized the text, ranked the text, put the images in image search and everything. So, I don't know. Because if it's not good for AI, then it's not good for search engines, and it's not good for web or anything that, summarizes. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on. I have a bunch of other topics to talk about, but I'm gonna end it here, and I'll do this again real soon. But I want to thank everyone for coming to the Thumbs United Streams podcast. I'll be airing this on Twitch in the form of a rerun, and it will be coming to your podcast app and player of choice. It's in the Apple Podcasts, Google, whatever, Amazon, and of course it's Podcasting 2.0 compliant podcast. So I want to thank everyone for coming out. See you later. Bye-bye.